This is Little Caesar's Pizza. How can I help you?
A little girl with a whimpering voice spelled every letter of her address one by one. Little did they know she had been kidnapped, and her abductor was forcing her to call them. After multiple days of captivity, this had been her only contact with the outside world.
I'm sorry? Who is this?
He went downstairs, came back upstairs with the pizza and was standing with the pizza box and was staring at me. And he handed me a flyer. And on the flyer was a picture of me, and it said missing. Turned to me, he was like, I have to get rid of you tonight.
A young girl was abducted from her home after school. Police have no leads in the disappearance of 9-year-old Jeannette Tamayo.
On the June 6, 2003, 9-year-old Jeannette Tamayo returned home from school to find her front door slightly open. This raised no suspicion as she assumed her mother had left it open from gardening. But when she entered her room and saw that the window was broken, she became worried. Soon after, a man knocked on her door. Opening the door slightly, the man asked her lots of questions and made numerous attempts to look inside the house. Jeannette proceeded to slowly close the door because the man had made her feel uncomfortable, but he pushed it open and forced himself inside the house. The man took Jeannette to her brother's room where he raped her and then forced her into the back of his car that he had parked in the garage. Soon after, Jeannette's mother and brother returned home and noticed the car and then saw Jeannette. Immediately going to her rescue, only to be brutally beaten by the man. Jeannette's mother asked him what he wanted, and his only response was, "You know what I want." He put Jeannette in the boot of his car and drove off.
My fear turned into courage, and I told myself, I'm a fighter. I'm gonna make it.
And when he was asking me questions, he was kind of peeking inside, trying to see who was in there. And that started making me feel really uncomfortable, and I started slowly closing the sliding door.
I got scared because I felt a really bad vibe from him.
And he put his hand in the way, slid it open, grabbed me, and took me to my brother's room.
He threw me on the bed and took off my pants. My brother crawled under the garage. When it opened a few inches, the first thing I told him was to run.
Surveillance footage from a neighbor who lived 3 houses down showed the man parked outside Jeannette's house for 30 minutes before he entered the house. However, the footage was blurry and it was difficult to identify faces and car number plates, etc. Jeannette was held captive in a man's house where she was repeatedly abused and threatened, whilst being handcuffed and kept on the second floor of his house. Jeannette remained calm and attempted to have conversations with her captor. She did this to gain his trust and would tell him about herself and her family.
I remember sliding down, laying there and looking up at the ceiling of the car and just thinking to myself, I'm not gonna make it. I'm gonna die.
Back at the house, after the police arrived, Rosalia was refusing to get into the ambulance. She was trying to explain everything that happened to the detective and the other officers. But her condition kept getting worse by the minute, and her panic state didn't do much to help. So after they secured Paul, they had to force her onto a stretcher against her will. They were both sent to the nearest hospital.
One of the first things that I did notice in the garage was a lot of blood. I knew at that point this was a very violent crime. You start thinking, are we going to bring her home alive?
The detective assigned to the case initially thought that maybe some of the blood around the kitchen and the garage belonged to Jeannette. As her forensic team were grabbing samples and examining the scene, she also called in handlers and bloodhounds to get the search started as soon as possible. But sadly, this didn't lead them very far since neither Jeannette nor her attacker were injured during the initial attack. As this was happening, She also noticed a security camera in the driveway of one of the neighbors. By reviewing the footage it captured in the last hour, they were able to establish a rough timeline of the events. 30 minutes before Jeannette arrived, her attacker smashed her bedroom window and burglarized the house. He then went back to his car and waited for Jeannette to arrive. Afterward, he followed her and knocked at the door. He then assaulted her in the bedroom for almost 30 minutes, at which point they headed to the garage. Meanwhile, Paul and Rosalia made it to the house. In the last bit of the recording, we can clearly hear Rosalia and Paul screaming for help.
It's heartbreaking. You have the evidence right there. It's so close, and yet you need just a little bit clearer video.
So before she was able to fall back on Paul and Rosalia, she alerted the media, hoping that even without an Amber Alert, maybe the population would mobilize themselves anyway and spread the word about her disappearance. Together with her department, they got service helicopters in the air with loudspeakers calling out her name, and gave press conference after press conference just to make sure Jeannette's name was on everyone's mind in San Jose.
It puts 1,000 more sets of eyes out on the street, and we knew it was extremely important to push the information out to the public, give them a picture of Jeannette, make sure that flyers were flooded throughout the city.
Along the way, Jeannette kept mental notes of every turn they made, hoping she would be able to find her way home if she ever escaped. After a short ride, the car suddenly stopped. The man drove into the garage of a large white house. He opened the door, picked her up, and carried her inside. There he went up the stairs to the second floor and opened a locked door. Behind it was a very small room with a TV, a little window, a bed, and a bathroom. He threw her on the ground and approached her with a menacing look. After each assault, he would clench her wrist to the shower head using a pair of handcuffs, run the water, and leave her there for a while.
Like, I started to break down and cry, and that was my only safe place, was the shower, because every time he left me in the shower was when he didn't touch me, he wouldn't hurt me, or he wouldn't rape me.
The next morning, the aftermath of the kidnapping took its toll. While the rest of the Tamayo family gathered around Rosalia in San Jose, the police asked some of the family members to take part in the public address.
In the morning, he was watching the news again. My cousin was talking to me through the news. She was saying, "Jeannette, if you can hear us, just know that. Be strong, girl. We're looking for you." She was like, "Just don't give up." That gave me hope. That gave me the strength. Either I'm going to fight to get out of here or die trying.
Because my life was at risk, I said to myself, I have to have a conversation with him so he gains my trust. So I remember asking him, "Where are you from?"
As he began trusting her, he removed her handcuffs and allowed her to walk around the house freely.
I remember feeling with my fingers a little button and like a latch. I realized that if I moved the latch one way and pressed that button, the handcuffs would release. My brother and I would always watch CSI, Law and Order, and the detectives on the shows would always look for clues.
She started to collect small items in her pockets, such as broken parts of a watch and modeling clay that she had found around the room.
I jumped back on the bed, put the handcuffs on, and once he walked through the door, he just looked at me, and in my mind I was hoping, please don't touch me, because I had things on me that I was afraid that he might find.
I feel very, very, very sad because you're scared. My daughter, she's a little kid. She got only 10 years. I asked the police what happened with my daughter. When my daughter came by, say, maybe never. I'm screaming a lot. My daughter I don't see for 3 days. I don't feel comfortable because I don't protect her. I don't protect her, I don't feel good.
My befriending was working. He asked me, "Are you hungry?" And I looked at him and I said, "Yeah."
He gave me his cell phone. He had a cell phone with him, and he made me call for pizza. He gave me the phone number of the cell phone that he had, and I gave it to the man. The man on the other side of the phone said, "Can I get your address?" He told me the address.
And just like she did with the movement of the car 2 days ago, she memorized all of it. If she ever got away, she wanted to be sure she would be able to take him down afterward. Eventually, someone rang the doorbell, and her kidnapper left the room for a minute. When he came back, he had a smile on his face. He put the pizza on the floor, and on top of the box, there was a missing person flyer with her face on it. He then told her that he would get rid of her tonight before leaving the room. Once he closed the door behind him, she threw away the pizza and started to grab all the evidence she could. She then stuffed all of it inside the pizza box and hid it under the bed. When he came back, he grabbed a pillow and started smothering her with it. Gasping for air, she tried to push her face against the side, but the man was too strong. As the lack of oxygen started to take its toll, she felt an immense rush of adrenaline running through her body, and in one final push, successfully slid her face to the side. Enough so that she was able to take one last breath.
As soon as 5 seconds later, after I got some air, he pulled the pillow off and he asked me, "Do you want to take a shower?"
When she came out of the shower, she quickly dressed up and made sure the pieces of evidence she gathered earlier were still in her pockets. She then heard someone knocking loudly at the door downstairs. She wanted to scream, but her kidnapper immediately jumped on her and put his hands over her mouth. Afraid that he would try to kill her again, she calmed down and waited for the person at the door to leave.
We were sitting in the room for a while, and afterwards, when he heard that it was all quiet, that's when he took me downstairs into the garage. It was all dark.
He then forced her in his car, put her back in handcuffs, and started driving. The ride was long, and Jeannette couldn't stop crying and screaming. Midway through it, she took a second to calm herself down in an attempt to make some sense of what had happened to her so far.
I remember just crying to myself and just saying, I did the best I could. I was just preparing myself for my own death. The car had stopped, and as soon as he stopped the car, he grabbed me by my hair. When I looked around, I was like, "Where are we?" And he was like, "I'm letting you go." And when he grabbed me by the back of my head, by my hair, he pulled me towards him. He was like, "If you ever tell anybody what I did or who I am or anything about me, I will come back for you and I will kill your family and I will kill you too." I was just all kinds of emotions in one, and I remember the gentleman that was behind the counter looking at me and asking me, "Are you okay?" And then he said, "You're the little girl from TV."
She said, "Let me use the phone." I said, "Okay, here's the phone." When she started dialing the phone, she was panicking, scared. She don't know how to dial the number.
I walked up to her and I said, "Hello, Jeannette. My name's Heather, and I'm here to help you." And before I really said anything else, she let me know that she had some evidence in her pocket. I asked her, "Do you think you can find his house?" And she said, "I think I can." And she said that she could direct us by saying right or left, right or left.
I felt brave. I think that's why I stood up in the back of the car and started yelling and saying, "That's it."
Our SWAT team then put a plan in place to go and take him into custody. They had a layout of the home from Jeannette, and they went in and were able to determine that he was hiding up in the attic.
Police say they know little about the background of the suspect. He was arrested at this house early yesterday morning. The district attorney's office filed 9 felony charges against Alvarez, including sexual assault, burglary, forcible lewd acts, rape, battery, and a special circumstance.
I remember them taking me to the hospital, running tests on me. I remember opening the door and seeing my mom.
And her face was so bad. Like, she didn't even look like my mom.
I think she touched my mom's face. She said, "You're hurt." You know, she was so brave. She didn't care about herself. She was worried about us.
You're everything to me, you and Paul were.
Very happy because I know my dad. for example, is when she born, second time for me.
It's so good to see you.
I never really got the chance to come back and like tell you guys thank you for everything that you did. Like I really appreciate it.
You were strong, you're smart. What happened was you were amazing. You were brave, and that's why you're here today.
Everybody has a story, and no matter what life throws at us, no matter what obstacles, we're all fighters. And we all have the ability to keep going. I turned my fear into courage. I got my family back.